The 9/11 hijackers, there were 19 of them, and 15 of them were Saudi Arabians, 2 of them were United Arab Emirates, 1 was an Egyptian, and 1 was Lebanese. So this is just facts, okay? This is assuming that the official version is true, which is a little bit of an assumption. Okay, so the hijackers were organized into 4 teams, each led by a pilot-trained hijacker with 3 or 4 muscle hijackers who were trained to help subdue the pilots, passengers, and the crew. The 19 hijackers, the 15 Saudi Arabians, the 2 United Arab Emirates, and the Lebanese and the Egyptian, they would eventually take down 4 flights. And the oldest was 33-year-old Mohammed Atta, and then you had a bunch of 20-year-olds. So they were all a bunch of young men. And so I wanted to focus on American Airlines Flight 11, just because when you focus if you narrow your focus, you could actually talk about something. I would say most Americans don't know any of these supposed hijackers. So you had Mohammed Atta, you had Abdulaziz al-Omari, Wail al-Shehri, Waleed al-Shehri, and Satam al-Suqami. This is American Airlines Flight 11. And American Airlines Flight 11 was the first one to go into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. So that was Mohammed Atta, that was the Egyptian, the 33-year-old Egyptian. Then you had Abdulaziz al-Omari, Wail al-Shehri, Waleed al-Shehri, which I guess they were brothers or related. They got the same last name. And then Satam al-Suqami, who is the 5th person. So there's 5 hijackers on American Airlines Flight 11, the one that flew into the North Tower, the one that flew into the World Trade Center first. 1's an Egyptian, and 4 are Saudi Arabians. So that's to begin with. That's to begin with. So to talk about some of these people, I think that Mohammed Atta is a good person to focus on, because who is Mohammed Atta? What was his reason, and why did he want to do this? Why did he want to destroy, World Trade Centers? It's like, well, what did we do? Well, there's been a lot of things. I think if you go through his life, it seems a lot of things that American foreign policy had directly affected this guy's life. And so the reason why you'd want to find out, not to find the reasons behind it. If the reason is they were jealous of our freedom, that's a different reason than, oh, you killed my brother. Well, we killed the brother, so that's why they did it. So I just want to go through this. This is a factual thing. Okay, so Mohammed Atta, he was born in 1968 in Kafir el-Sheikh Governorate, Egypt. He was Egyptian hijacker, one of the ringleaders of the September 11th attacks. The hijacker pilot of American Airlines Flight 11 crashed a plane into the North Tower of the World Trade Center as part of the coordinated attacks. He was the oldest hijacker to participate in the attacks. He was born in a small town in Egypt's Nile Delta. Atta moved with his family to the Abdeen sections of Cairo at the age of 10. Atta studied architecture at Cairo University, graduated in 1990, continued his studies in Hamburg, Germany. Okay, so that's a little bit about him. Now, there's some interesting things here. So we have the Satam al-Suqami. Okay, so these are one of the 5. I'm limited my focus to just the 5 of the hijackers on American Airlines Flight 11. And so on the day of the attacks, Suqami checked in at the flight desk using his Saudi passport and boarded American Airlines Flight 11 at the Logan International Airport. He was selected by CAPS, so they checked his bags, and they did extra screening for explosives, and it involved no extra screening at the passenger security checkpoint. I don't know what they would have found on this, guys, if they used box cutters. That's, I don't know. It seems like hardly anything could be used as a weapon. Now, an FAA memo circulated in February 2002 claimed that Suqami shot passenger Daniel M. Lewin, who is in seat 9B, co-founder of al-Suqami Technologies and a former member of the Israeli Sayeret Malka, for attempting to foil the hijacking. Now, some people say that there was gunshots, but then other people say that al-Suqami had stabbed Lewin as he attempted to intervene in the hijacking. Now, later on, they're going to find his passport. So al-Suqami's passport was reportedly found by a passerby, identity unknown, reported in the vicinity of Vesey Street before the towers collapsed. So somebody found the passport before the World Trade Center collapsed. This is mistakenly reported by many news outlets to be Mohammed Atta's passport. A columnist for the British newspaper The Guardian expressed incredulity about the authenticity of this report, questioning whether a paper passport could survive the inferno unsinged when the plane's black boxes were never found. According to the testimony before the 9/11 Commission by lead counsel Susan Ginsburg, his passport had been manipulated in a fraudulent manner in ways that have been associated with al-Qaeda. Passports belonging to Zai Al-Jarrah and Saeed Al-Ghamdi were found at the crash site of United Airlines Flight 93, as well as an air phone. That's another reason why I'm picking these two flights, because we actually saw the plane crash into the buildings with the first two, the United, the Flight 11, American Airlines Flight 11. So we saw the two in the World Trade Center attacks, but the Pentagon, we haven't seen any surveillance video released to see that. And then the Flight 93, we see a bunch of rubble, into the ground. And so in terms of videotape evidence, we only have videotape evidence of two of the crashes. Now this passport debacle is pretty interesting. They found this guy's passport beforehand, before the towers collapsed, which seems highly unlikely. So they threw the passport out the window right before they crashed their plane. And then they would say later on, too, that there were other passports, but they were found in United Airlines Flight 93. Now, that could be possible. If the rubble is out in the field, then you could probably go through the rubble. But if it's in the top of the World Trade Center and then all that collapsed and came down, they couldn't even find the black box. So they're saying if the black box of the airplane was destroyed, then how are we going to find a passport? So this is very highly suspect that al-Suqami's passport was found, in the streets of New York. So that's one of the guys, Satam al-Suqami. He was born in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and he was 25 years old. He was a law student, and then he was recruited into al-Qaeda along with Majid Mohamed, another hijacker, and traveled to Afghanistan. And then that's when it said that he was chosen to be a part of the 9/11 attacks. And, so he came to the U.S. in April 2001, and then within a couple of months, September 11th, 2001, al-Suqami boarded American Airlines Flight 11, participated in the hijacking of the plane so it could be crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center as part of the coordinated attacks. So that's one of the hijackers, right? So let's go to Waleed al-Shehri. So this Waleed al-Shehri, his brother Wail, and Abdulaziz al-Omari arrived together at the Logan Airport at 6:45 on the morning of September 11, 2001, having left their Ford Focus rental in the airport parking facility. Upon check-in, they were flagged by the CAP system. They checked, but they even x-rayed the crutch, but there was nothing in the crutch to be found. By 7:40 a.m., all 5 hijackers were aboard the flight, which was scheduled to depart at 7:45 a.m. Wail and Waleed al-Shehri sat together in first-class seats, in seats 2A and 2B, respectively. The aircraft taxied away from Gate 226 and departed Logan International Airport at 7:59 a.m. from the runway 4R after a 14-minute delay. The hijacking of the Flight 11 began approximately at 8:14 a.m., which is when the pilot stopped responding to air traffic control. Once the hijacking began, the brothers are suspected of having stabbed 2 flight attendants. At 8:46:40, Mohammed Atta deliberately crashed Flight 11 into the northern facade of the North Tower, Tower 1 of the World Trade Center. The damage caused to the North Tower destroyed any means of escape from above the impact zone, trapping 1,344 people. The North Tower collapsed at 10:28 after burning for 102 minutes. So there's some interesting things here. So first it starts, they're aboard the flight at 7:40, then there's 14-minute delay, then they finally get up in the air, and then they start the hijacking at 8:14. So 8:14 a.m. they start the hijacking, and then within 32 minutes they crashed into the North Tower. So once they got up and said, let's do this, then it took them 30 minutes to eventually crash into the World Trade Center. And then after, 8:46, the North Tower would collapse at 10:20. So that's within, 1 hour, less than 2 hours later. And so it says after been burning for 102 minutes. So those are just facts, okay? And so that's Waleed al-Shehri. I'm sitting there thinking about if we just focus on Mohammed Atta, because he was the pilot, so therefore he's the lead singer. But I'm thinking too that the strongmen are important too, because if they weren't important, I mean, look what happened with the United flight, the 93. 93 crashed into into a field in Pennsylvania, and so because they crashed into a field, the strongmen didn't do their job, right? So I think that the strongman and the pilot, I think all 5 of these guys are important to focus on. So that's Waleed al-Shehri. All right. So the Logan International Airport is in Boston, Massachusetts. So this is they're all on the East Coast. Now, Wail al-Shehri, which is his brother, right? Waleed and Wail al-Shehri are brothers. So you have 5 individuals, 1 Egyptian, 4 Saudi Arabians, and 2 of the Saudi Arabians are brothers. And then you have, they were all flagged again. Then they said that they x-rayed the crutch. By 7:40, all 5 hijackers were aboard the flight. They're in 2A and 2B, and all these are following the same things. Flight 11 was hijacked approximately 8:14. So we're getting some reconfirmation of these times. Once the hijacking began, the brothers are suspected of having stabbed 2 flight attendants at 8:46:40, so 8:46 a.m. and 40 seconds. Mohammed Atta deliberately crashed Flight 11 into the northern facade of the North Tower, and so that's identical, okay? That's exactly the exact same report that I just read. And then you have the other guy, this isn't all 5 of them. There's one I think I'm missing. But you have Abdulaziz al-Omari. So they drive, they had a hotel in Boston, and they drove their rented Nissan to a Comfort Inn in South Portland, Maine, where they spent the night in room 232. It was initially reported that Adnan and Amir Bukhari were the 2 hijackers who had rented and driven the car. In the early hours of September 11th, they boarded a commuter flight back to Boston to connect to American Airlines Flight 11. American 11 was hijacked 15 minutes after the flight departed by Omari and 4 other hijackers. Was allowed trained pilot Mohammed Atta to crash the Boeing 767 into the North Tower of the World Trade Center as a part of an attack that killed thousands. There's, 1,300 people just in that one single flight alone. So I'm thinking if there's 1,000 people in the one flight and another 1,000 in that other flight, then that means there's only a couple hundred people in the World Trade Centers. So not that many people had actually died from the World Trade Center collapse, even though there's a lot of people that were jumping out of the windows, right? And because there's 3,000. The total body count for September 11th was 3,000. So yeah, American Airlines Flight 11. Again, it doesn't say who was the main strong man. So all 4 of them, I guess, they all said, "All right, let's do this now." And Mohammed Atta gets the controls. They clearly get the pilots. They subdue the stewardesses, and then they keep all the passengers quiet. And then, this also makes me think just about, standing up and fighting. Do you want to be one of those sheep who's just sitting in the cockpit or sitting in the plane, not doing anything about it? If you stand up and fight, yeah, you might die. But if you don't fight, you're going to die anyways. So I think if I was to choose which way I would want to go out, I'd want to go out like United 93 did. That stood up and fought, and then actually the plane crashed like almost perpendicular, going straight into the ground. And when it went straight into the ground, everybody was killed, but no innocent people were killed. So, outside the airplane, no innocent people were killed. And so that's the way, in terms of fighting against the oppressors. You want to stand up and fight, right? If you stand up and you fight, you might die, you might not win, but if you don't fight at all, you've already lost. So, Mistaken identity. Here's another thing with the passports. There's controversy over Omari's identity erupted shortly after the attacks. At first, the FBI had named Abdulrahman al-Omari, a pilot for Saudi Arabian Airlines, as a pilot of Flight 11, but that was not to be true. They found out that this person was still alive, and the FBI issued an apology, and it was quickly determined that Mohammed Atta was the pilot among the hijackers of Flight 11, so it wasn't this Abdulrahman al-Omari, which this guy's is Abdulaziz al-Omari. So this other guy is Abdulrahman. So it's just Abdul versus Abdulaziz, and they got the same last name, al-Omari. It's quickly shown that this person was still alive, and the FBI issued an apology. It was also quickly determined that Mohammed Atta was the pilot. FBI then named Abdulaziz al-Omari as the hijacker. A man with the same name as those given by the FBI turned up alive in Saudi Arabia, saying that he had studied at the University of Denver and his passport was stolen there in 1995. The name, origin, birth date, and occupation were released by the FBI, but the picture was not of him. I couldn't believe it when the FBI put me on their list. He said they gave my name and my date of birth, but I'm not a suicide bomber. I am here. I'm alive. I have no idea how to fly a plane. I had nothing to do with this. So that's pretty remarkable, right? So essentially it was his passport with a different picture, a different photo. Now, George Bush, he had actually said that in some interview that he was concerned that it could have been a conspiracy. He was wondering if that perhaps there was a conspiracy in the government that was beyond his control that had done something. So even George Bush, baby Bush, George W. Bush was concerned that perhaps one of the other agencies had tried to pull something like this off. And when you look at Operation Northwoods, it says that the first time that our own government has plotted against us in order to, to justify a warmongering policy. The explosion on the USS Maine, I think it was the USS, but the Maine, remember the Maine?
When it comes to health care, second, it means the difference between life and death.
Okay, so that's just some noise. So let's carry on with this, okay? Because this is all information, so I'd like to look at this and come back to some of this. Mohammed Atta, okay, so he's the front man. He's the oldest one, and he's living all over the place. It says that he went to Germany and that he went to, let's see, Cairo. He was in Egypt, and he was in Afghanistan for some time. And then I think it says he was in Venice, Florida, the Huffman Aviation. He was entered the Accelerated Pilot Program. They obtained instrument ratings in November 2000. In early September 2001, Atta traveled to Prince George's County, Maryland, where fellow hijacker Hani Hamjur was at the time. Atta then traveled to Boston. Just the fact that we don't know who these hijackers are. I mean, there's eventually this father, Mohammed Atta's father, is going to say that he just talked to him, so he was still alive, and then later on he would say Mossad. Mossad killed him, which I think Mossad is what? Maybe the Israeli, some intelligence service, Mossad. They said, yeah, it's responsible for intelligence collection, covert operations, and counterterrorism. So about 2 or 3 years later, Mohammed Atta's father said that Mossad had killed him. So we didn't know what happened to him or where it went or anything like that. The father said he was still alive, and then several years later, so the father could have just been lying completely, right? And the mother even said that her son was framed because it didn't fit his character. So I don't know. There's 28 pages released. The Saudi Arabian, there was more of a Saudi Arabian influence, which shouldn't be a shocker, since 14 or 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi Arabian citizens. They came out of Saudi Arabia. In fact, none of them came from Iraq, and none of them came from Afghanistan. They all came, 15 came from Saudi Arabia, 2 came from the United Arab Emirates, 1 came from Lebanon, and then the other one came from Egypt. So I think I'm going to check out this Mohammed, see what his attack was. There's a martyrdom video which was put up, but you can't actually hear any words. It says that he did meet with Osama bin Laden, and Osama bin Laden didn't take credit for it, but then several years later he did take credit. So is it an opportunist? Did he just say, okay, fine, yeah, I did it, and or did he have nothing to do with it? Right? So I want to check out his attack, what his role was, They said that you can actually hear Mohammed Atta's voice over the intercom, and he's basically telling everybody to keep quiet. He's turning around and going back to the airport, which wasn't true at all. So, let's see here. I want to check out the, I guess I should just type in 9/11 hijackers, because I only mentioned 4 of them, right? And then I'm talking about this guy. So I want to get the last guy, and then I want to talk about Mohammed Atta. So Mohammed Atta, he says that Atta picked up al-Omari the night before from the Milner Hotel in Boston, Massachusetts, and then they drove to Portland, Maine. They were seen getting gasoline at an Exxon gas station. They arrived at 5:43 p.m., spent the night in room 232. While in South Portland, they're seen making 2 ATM withdrawals, stopping at Walmart. FBI also reported that 2 Middle Eastern men were seen in the parking lot of a Pizza Hut where Atta is known to have eaten that day. Atta and al-Omari arrived early the next morning at 5:40 a.m. at the Portland International Jetport, where they left their rental car in the parking lot and boarded a 6 a.m. Colgan Air U.S. Airways Express BE 1900C flight to Boston's Logan International Airport. In Portland, Mohammed Atta was selected by the CAPS, which required his checked bags to undergo extra screening for explosives, but they didn't find anything. The connection between the 2 flights was within Terminal B, but the 2 gates were not connected within security. Passengers must leave the security area, go outdoors, cross a covered roadway, and enter another building before going through security again. There are 2 separate concourses in Terminal B, the South Concourse. Okay, so the hijacking began at 8:14 a.m., 15 minutes after the flight departed, when beverage service would be starting. At this time, the pilot stopped responding to air traffic control, and the aircraft began deviating from the planned route. At 8:18, flight attendants Betty Ong and Madeline Amy Sweeney began making phone calls to American Airlines to report what was happening. Ong provided information about lack of communication with the cockpit, lack of access to the cockpit, and passenger injuries. At 8:24 a.m., a voice believed to be Atta's was heard by air traffic controllers saying, "We have some planes, just stay quiet, you will be okay. We are returning to the airport, nobody move, everything will be okay. If you try to make any moves, you'll endanger yourself. And the airplane, just stay quiet, nobody move, please. We are going back to the airport. Don't try to make any stupid moves." The plane's transponder was turned off at 8:28 a.m. At 8:46 a.m., Atta flew the plane into the North Tower. So, because the flight from Portland to Boston had been delayed, his bags did not make it onto Flight 11. Atta's bags were later recovered in Logan International Airport. They contained airline uniforms, flight manuals, and other items. The luggage included a copy of Atta's will, written in Arabic, as well as a list of instructions, also in Arabic, such as make an oath to die and renew your intentions. You should feel complete tranquility because the time between you and your marriage in heaven is very short. And check your weapon before you leave, and long before you leave, you must make your knife sharp, and you must not discomfort your animal during the slaughter. So, yeah, okay, so he had airline uniforms, so I guess they could put on a uniform and pretend that they were the pilot's flight manuals, so I guess they had other items to be able to fly the plane. Some of this stuff, the will, I think would be interesting. What was his will? What was his whole will? It's talking about sort of just like his, mottos for life, but also make your knife sharp so you do not discomfort your animal during the slaughter. So just, make sure it's not a jagged knife, and which is, even more revolting if you think about them. They killed people. There's a martyrdom video, and they said that there's a guy, Atta and Ziad Jarrah, had recorded a martyrdom message 6 years earlier at a training camp in Afghanistan. They were laughing and smiling in front of the camera. They had never been pictured before. Unidentified sources from both Al-Qaeda and the United States confirmed to the Times that the video is authentic. A separate section of the video shows Osama bin Laden addressing his followers at a complex near Kandahar. Ramzi bin al-Sheeb is also identified in the video. According to the Sunday Times, American and German investigators have struggled to find evidence of Atta's whereabouts in January 2000 after he disappeared from Hamburg. The hour-long tape places him in Afghanistan at a decisive moment in the development of the conspiracy when he was given operational command. Months later, both he and Jarrah enrolled at flying schools in America. So, the hijackers in the September 11th hijacking, 15 of them were from Saudi Arabia, and two of them were from the United Arab Emirates. One was Lebanese and one was an Egyptian, with American Airlines Flight 11, the first one that flew into the World Trade Center, that was flown by Mohammed Atta, and then he had 4 goons with him, and one's a 22-year-old al-Omari, and then the brothers, 28 and 22-year-old Wail and Waleed al-Shehri, and then Satam al-Suqami. And so I think Satam al-Suqami, did I mention much about him? If not, I will repeat it, because the passport, this is something about the passport was found. Yeah, I did talk about him. So this is, I guess I did talk about all of them, but his passport had been found by a passerby in the vicinity of VC Street before the towers had collapsed, but then later on, you know, it's the Guardian is saying that it couldn't have been, there's no way that that could have been a real passport. Then they said that his passport was manipulated in a fraudulent manner in ways that have been associated with Al-Qaeda. I heard Al-Qaeda is just the group, the group that the CIA had been financing to fight against the Russians, and so that's what Al-Qaeda actually means. So the CIA having to do with Al-Qaeda, Bush was curious about maybe there was a conspiracy. I don't know. I mean, I think there are more questions that remain than answers for me, but I'm trying to find out all the information that we have. So, let's see. Suqami supposedly had shot the passenger, Daniel M. Lewin, and that's the only passenger that got shot. He was a co-founder and a former member of the Israeli Sakarat Matkal. So he shot Daniel M. Lewin, but then later on it said that he was stabbed. So Satam al-Suqami is also there, and the other hijackers that I mentioned, the 2 brothers, and then the Abdulaziz Omari. So the al-Shehri brothers, Wail and Waleed, and then you have, you know, the Egyptian, the 33-year-old Egyptian Mohammed Atta. So that's a little bit of information. So on 9/11, I think this is something to revisit every 9/11 to get to know as much information as we can about 9/11, so that we we have all the data and we have all the information that we need in order to make decisions. Don't just trust what you're told, you know, just because it's on TV. That just means they went ahead and looked at all this information and just told you the stuff that they remembered. But you can read so much more than what you can speak and hear. And then we need to share the information that we have, so we're actually having a conversation out here. So yeah, all right, that'll be it for now.